Well, hey guys, and thanks for tuning in here to our video tutorial of how to build a pie graph using pages. This is going to be super helpful to you throughout the semester in Maine Fish and Wildlife class, but particularly with today's assignment on our personal values of wildlife graph and essay. We've been looking at how wildlife are valuable to us here in North America. And today it comes time to apply these values to you. And the first part of this assignment is to build that graph to help visualize your personal values and how you assign value to wildlife. To do that, we're going to use Pages. So let's open up Pages here and let's create a new document. It's going to ask us how we want it oriented, and I'm just going to say we'll use a blank landscape here, give us a little more room with a graph. Now, once you've got your blank document open in Pages, the first thing we need to do is come up here and select this little plus symbol. That's how we add all kinds of fun stuff into Pages. We could add images and shapes and data tables. And in this case, we want to select this little chart option here. And look at this. We've got all kinds of different charts we can put into Pages. In this assignment, we want to create a pie graph. You could also use the old donut graph. If you're more into donuts than pie, hey, that's on you. Go ahead, you do you, okay? So I happen to like pie. Man, it's tough to beat a nice apple pie this time of year. Let's go. So I'm going to go pie graph. And when you select that, it's going to drop a default pie graph in there in your document. Looks great. It's got some issues that we're going to fix right now. The first thing we need to do, if yours isn't already selected, is to click on that graph once with your finger there, and it'll get this blue border around it. And once I've got it selected, I'm going to come over here to the paintbrush option, which is just how we edit, the appearance of things in Pages, whether it's your font or your graphics you're putting in there. And in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is turn my chart title on. We want to have a title on any chart we build in Pages, and it's not set to default in there, so we always need to turn that chart title on. The second thing I'm going to do, and you can do this with your finger too, is I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to pinch this key together, and then I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to move it down here out of the way, because nobody likes to have their key mixed right in with their title up there at the top of their graph. I've never understood that. So we can move our key out of the way, or our legend in this case is the word they use for it in Pages. Now I'm going to double click on the title. And if you're at home and not using a mouse or whatever, you're just going to tap twice real quick there on the title. And we can edit it now. And we're going to just name it after ourselves. Whatever your name is, Student X's personal values of wildlife. So there you go. Whatever your name is, your personal values of wildlife. That's what we're creating here with this graph. And all we've got left now to do is to edit this graph and have it actually correlate to your own personal values. And to do that, I'm going to touch the graph once with my pointer finger there and get that blue border back. And now I've got the option up there to edit data right up here. I'm going to click Edit Data. And here we go. Now I can see the data table that controls my graph. And I can change this now. Instead of months of the year, I'm going to put in my actual values. The first of which being commercial value. We talked about that the other day. It's the value assigned to wildlife through the acquisition of money. Do you make money off wildlife? Does anybody in your family make money off wildlife? Think about that. Create a value based upon that, okay? We said wildlife are valuable monetarily in tons of different ways here in Maine. All right, so the next one after that we talked about was game value, right? And we said game value is the value assigned to wildlife through hunting and fishing for food and sport. So if you're an outdoors person, if you like hunting and or fishing, or you have family members that do, you probably have some game value, and you want to think about how much of that pie is devoted just to wildlife as game, okay? We want to go, the next one we talked about was aesthetic value. Aesthetic value is the value we assign to wildlife through its beauty and appeal to the human spirit, right? If we find wildlife beautiful, then they have some aesthetic value. And how important is that to you in your overall value of wildlife, their beauty? The next one we talked about was the ethical or intrinsic value of wildlife. I tend to like to think of it in my mind as intrinsic meaning from within. And, many people, I think it's innate in humans, but we just think wildlife are cool, and we want to know that they're out there. That's why we, here in North America, spend so much money supporting conservation around the world. In other parts of the world, people donate all kinds of money to protect wildlife on the other side of the planet, just to know that they're out there and always will be. And that goes back to our intrinsic value of wildlife. Next in line, we talked about the scientific value of wildlife and how amazing they are scientifically, how many breakthroughs and discoveries there are left to be made, and how we can apply that to help people, right? So the scientific value of wildlife is huge. And finally, we talked about that ecological value of wildlife, their role in the overall ecosystem. We mentioned, how some creatures play a role as umbrella species and others being keystone species, and they all, fulfill some sort of role in an ecosystem. How much do you value that? How much do you value biodiversity and all creatures playing a part in healthy ecosystems around you? So you got a big task at hand. You gotta now divide up your overall value of wildlife into these six pieces. Imagine I gave you 100, value tokens to divvy up here. How would you do it? I'm gonna make a very boring, very default graph here that adds up to 100 points, just like a pie graph normally would. And I'm just gonna do that so that you can kind of see how we can edit the data, change the look of our graph, and there you have it. We've got a beautifully edited graph with a nice descriptive title. The only other thing that I would suggest maybe trying here is if we come over here, we've got our percentages labeled in there, and we've got this legend that correlates, and so on. Somebody could look and say, okay, that blue piece is commercial value. But we could do something else here to make this even simpler to read, because remember, the whole purpose of a graph is to visually represent data and make it easy for people to understand. To do that, I can go to Style, and I can go over here under Labels in Style, and I can select Data Point Names. And if I turn that toggle on, check this out. It's going to add the names of each category right into the piece on the graph. And I like that look. I think that's pretty cool. It really streamlines it. It tells you, hey, commercial, 20%. It shows the size of the graph, the size of the piece compared to all the other ones around it, right? So in this case, if you choose to do that, the only other thing I would do is go back here to Chart, and I would turn your legend off, because if you have your pieces already labeled, having that legend out there is a little, redundant. We don't need that there as well. So there you have it. You can leave the legend in and not label them. You can label them, take the legend out, do whatever you want to do, whatever you think looks best. But there's all kinds of options there. Pages is pretty handy for graphing the stuff that we're going to do this semester. So I appreciate you following along with me, and I hope that this video was helpful if you run into a little issue at home on how to build a pie graph in Pages. And I'm excited to see you guys next time in class.